Hello and welcome to part 3 of our 3-part series on grading in Blackboard. This video will cover rubrics in Blackboard. We'll look at creating a rubric, applying a rubric to a graded item, and using rubrics during the grading process. Let's start with creating a rubric. Once we're in Blackboard, we'll navigate to the Rubrics area. In the Control panel, click Course Tools, scroll down to Rubrics. You'll notice at the top of the page we have two options. One is to import a rubric. Rubrics can be exported and imported from one course to another, similar to the way that tests can be exported and imported from one course to another. And there are some great online repositories from Blackboard of rubrics that have been created and shared by faculty from across the country. We'll have links to those in the video description here. We also have the option to create a rubric, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to click the Create Rubric button. You have to provide a name for the rubric. You want to use good naming conventions here so that when it comes time to apply the rubric to the grade items, it's easy to find the rubric that you're looking for. We can also add a description with some more details about the rubric. Section 2 is the rubric detail area. This is where the bulk of the work of creating the rubric will be done. This is where we'll set up our scoring parameters and our criteria. We can add rows and columns with the add buttons. Setting the rubric type will determine the way the rubric calculates a score during the grading process. We'll use the default, which is %. There's also an option to toggle the criteria weight setting on or off, and as you can see, the weights disappear there. Turning that off will balance those all evenly, so every criteria will be worth roughly the same value. And by leaving them on, we have the option to weight each criteria however we like, so we can weight one criteria more heavily than the others if we want to. We can edit each criteria here, or delete the criteria entirely. We can change the name to reflect the criteria that we're actually evaluating work on. We can also rearrange the order that the criteria appear using the arrow buttons, selecting the criteria and moving them up or down. We can do the same with the levels of achievement. We can edit each one or remove them. We can add more again using the buttons at the top, and we can reorder the levels by selecting the radio button and clicking the arrows from left to right. At the intersection of each achievement and criteria level, there is a text box to enter information describing what expectations have to be met in order to achieve that level. Once the rubric is completed, we'll click Submit to save, and now the rubric appears in our list. Now let's apply our rubric to an assignment. We can also apply rubrics to discussions and other types of graded items, and even some test questions, but for our purposes, we're going to use an assignment. When creating or editing an assignment, in the grading section, there's an option to add a rubric. Clicking the Add Rubric button will provide a few options. We can select from our existing rubrics, create a new rubric, or create from an existing rubric, which will create and then open a copy of a rubric that we've selected for us to edit. We're going to use the rubric that we just created, so we'll click on Select Rubric. We'll check the box next to the rubric that we'd like and click Submit. Now that the rubric is associated with the grade item, in this case an assignment, we have a few additional options. If it's not the rubric that we want to use, we can remove it here by clicking on the red X. If we want to check the rubric, we can click the View Rubric icon and we can review the rubric. We can also edit the rubric by clicking here and that will return us to the rubric edit screen. In the center, we have the option to use the rubric for secondary evaluation instead of grading. We can see the last edit date for the rubric here, and the most important option of all is the last option. By default, the rubric will not be displayed for students. This can be changed to show the rubric to students with scores, without scores, or after grading. We recommend displaying the rubric with the scores to students in most cases. Rubrics guide students as they complete their work. They set the expectations for students and help them meet those expectations while they're composing their work. They also help students understand their score and see what areas they might need more improvement in and what areas they're doing well in. Once we've applied the rubric to the assignment, we'll click Submit to save our changes. Now let's take a look at grading with our rubric. Grading with rubrics is easy and it can make grading more efficient. From the assignment submission screen, the rubric can be accessed just below the score box. The rubric will open in a new window and you can click each level of achievement, or you can click the option at the top to select the same level for all criteria. Each intersection provides a feedback box where you can provide comments specific to that student's work as it relates to that criteria. There's also an overall feedback area at the bottom of the rubric. Once we've completed our comments and feedback, we'll click Save. You can see that the score has now been entered based on our selection on the rubric into the score box, and we do still have the option to add additional feedback in the Feedback to Learner area. Once we've completed grading with the rubric, we'll click Submit as normal. And that's all there is to it. Creating rubrics is fairly simple and they're highly customizable. Applying rubrics is easy during or after the creation of graded items, and grading with rubrics provides ample opportunities for specific feedback to help students understand their grade and improve their work. I hope this series has been helpful to you in your grading in Blackboard, and as always, be awesome.